The OG GOAT still got it. Plus, Brad goes full Hulk smash. MJ and Jonna skate right on through. The King's Palace finally gets some wins. Janelle has been hiding a possible major injury, and Ayanna lets Teck know that she is ready to make them babies. It's the Challenge All-Stars 2 Episode 9 recap coming up right now. What up, my fellow Challenge lovers? Welcome to the Challenge Historian, where we dive deep into all things MTV's The Challenge, past, present, or future. If it's happening in the Challenge universe, then we are here to document it. I am your host and dedicated Challenge Historian, Jacob Hollabaugh. Thank you so very much for being here with us today. On today's pod, the first week in many months at this point that we've only had the one podcast for the week. We are talking all things All-Stars 2, Episode 9, penultimate episode. We've made it right up to the verge of, I guess we've almost technically seen the start of the finals with that twist at the end, but all things All-Stars 2, Episode 9. That is the agenda for the day. As always, we'll do our Cliff Notes recaps, our storylines, our awards, and finish up with a couple predictions for that final next week. Only programming notes to speak of, or next week will be just like this one, just one pod next week. That will be that All-Stars 2 finale podcast covering the 10th and final episode. And possibly, depending how exciting of a finale it is, maybe we'll just turn it into our finale plus season wrap-up, or maybe we'll wait a week to do that. Worked pretty well on the Spies, Lies, and Allies, so probably do the same for the All-Stars. And also next week, we'll have some more info on what's going to be happening once these wonderful seasons of the Challenge are no more and we are officially in full off-season mode. So more on that to come next week, along with that All-Stars 2 Episode 10 finale recap next Thursday. So otherwise, everything else staying the same. Hit that follow, hit that subscribe, hit that 5-star rating if you don't mind. If you're listening on Spotify, if that's popped up on your Spotify yet, it just did on mine for the first time a few weeks ago. Thank you for all the support. And with that, let's dive right on into it and head into that Cliff Notes recap. Alrighty, let's start with everything that happened, everything that went down in Episode 9, the penultimate episode, right before the finale, All-Stars 2, Ep 9, Cliff Notes recap, all of the plot line as fast as we can. Here we go, 3, 2, 1, and we are off. The hit song, Save the Palace, is officially stuck in everyone's head within the house, much to MJ's chagrin. Everyone gets nervous about the final elimination. We find out that Janelle has been nursing a back injury that has her in constant pain. We then head to the Daily Challenge, where in a challenge first, 3 semi-trucks are involved. 3 of them, one of them a double-decker, TJ has to point out, so basically 4. The pairs start on the middle one. The double-decker jump down to the side semi-truck, untie knots to unlock 4 different keys, use those keys to open the final big box, get that big key out, jump/climb back onto the middle double-decker to open the final box and end your run. Both partners have to do this on their own side semis. It's timed. You only get 10 total minutes, I think they said. So you've got to get it done before the semis pull away from each other. Now, the women crush this competition with 4 of the 5 getting through all of their knots, getting back onto the double-decker, finishing the whole thing. The men, not so much. The only one who does is Nehemiah, who, along with Melinda, get the win as the only pair to finish the whole thing. Coming in last was Brad and Jodi, due to Brad just kind of losing his cool and deciding to rip the lock boxes open instead of undoing the knots. They are going into elimination. Back at the house, the choice is obvious. Nehemiah and Melinda put Jonna, MJ, and Janelle up for selection, meaning Ayanna and Teck are straight into the final along with them. King's Palace rejoices at last. At the selections, Teck and Ayanna decide to split their votes, send it over to Nehemiah and Melinda to make the final call. They decide to go for the biggest threat in their mind, which is Darrell, and pick he and Janelle. After Darrell opens notes from home to find out his grandmother has passed, we then head to the arena. There, the 2 teams play Smash House. One partner is in a chamber with a fake living room set up. They have to smash things until it's into small enough pieces to fit through a 6-inch hole into the next room where their partner is. That partner has to smash those items up to get them small enough to fit through a 3-inch hole and out into a tub. 10 minutes of smashing to see who can get the most weight transferred out of their rooms into their tubs. Now, it lives up to its name, and Everyone seems to have a great time taking out some aggression on the cinder blocks that make up a majority of the, quote, room setup. In the end, it's super close, but Darrell and Janelle pull it out 357 to 355 pounds. Very, very close. Jodi and Brad head home, and the remaining 8 players don't have much time to celebrate or prepare because TJ announces the final starts now. Literally right now. He tells them to head to the beach and get ready to start. It's nighttime. Who the hell knows what's going on? TJ always with those twists. That is where the episode ends. Whew. All right. So a lot went down. We're down to our final 8 teams. The last pair has gone home. We've got some injuries. We've got a really good elimination and challenge. We got the King's Palace song being sung over and over and over again. A lot to talk about. So let's move into the storylines segment and discuss it all in depth. With the storylines, we've got a couple to cover here. They dwindle a little by this point of the season with, especially given eventually the winner of the daily challenge, everything. There's a lot of obvious decisions being made. There's not a lot of strategizing going on in this. There's not a lot of backstabbing there. With the season, that became 2 very clear factions of the house alliances. It leads to the last couple episodes not being all that, suspenseful as far as who's going to go in, but suspenseful as far as who's going to win some of the challenges in the elimination. So let's start first with one of the biggest storylines of the episode, and that was Janelle's injury. In the next week on last week, we saw that this was going to come up, and we didn't know if this is one of those, moments where the challenge editors are just setting us up for a whole big nothing, and, her back's a little hurt, but then we never hear about it again, or her back's hurt and she's going home because she's really, really, really hurt and shouldn't be competing. You never know when you see something like that in the next week on. But we get here, we find out that she had a really bad back injury way back in 2014, and that it was 3 to 4 years or more even before she ever got it back to being 100% kind of back to normal, fully rehabbed, and everything seemingly back in a good place. But then that earlier this season, I believe I was slightly confused at first, but then they showed the clip too, and she made sure to mention the 30-foot jump into the cenote because she references jumping into the cenote, which for the first time in like 6 episodes, we don't go to the cenote this episode, but we've been there a lot this season. So at first I was a little confused. When did this injury happen? Was this just last, a day or 2 before the episode before that we've seen? But no, it was a few episodes back, probably, I don't know, maybe a week or so back in the actual time of that they've been there when they had to do the 30-foot jump down into the cenote, and she kind of landed a little bit on her back, a little sideways, and re-aggravated whatever she's got going on. She was in constant pain. She tells this to Brad, and she makes mention that, if it wasn't for this being a partner game, if this was individual, I probably would go home because it would, my career matters to me, my family, and obviously my physical health. Back is a scary, scary thing to have any pain in, and without real details of what's going on, literally, we don't even need them because it's the back. And if there's any pain in your back, that's the last place you really want pain in your body as far as bones and muscles are considered. So it does seem legitimately bad. And I definitely take her at her word that if she was solo, if this was 100% individual game still, that we might have seen Janelle bow out at some point. But wanting to stick it out with Darrell, she has been sticking it out so far. She brings it up to him, what seemingly is the first time she's, talking to Brad, seemed to be, maybe it's just the first we're seeing, but I don't know how it doesn't get back to Darrell. Otherwise, seemed to be that was the first time she ever brought it up. Then she tells Darrell. And Darrell's reaction is appreciated because I would say that I would love to say that I would react perfectly in this situation, that I would be able to just immediately be like, oh, we got to get you taken care of. Like, don't think another moment about the game or like me or anything. Like, if you're hurt and it's your back, like, let's get up on out of here. I would love to think that's immediately what I would do or say, or that anyone would do or say. But I'm also a real person who knows. I definitely wouldn't. I would immediately, probably the selfish part of the brain is going to immediately be like, holy shit, my partner's telling me that her back is done for. Is she telling me that she's quitting? Is she telling me that we have zero chance of competing? Is she telling me, like, is it over? Like, that's all you can think of it. It seems to be all he can kind of think of, at least at first. He's a little, once the initial conversation goes down, he handles it a little better later on. And again, he doesn't necessarily like handle it bad. It's just a immediate like, ah, shit. Like, are we done? We're not. Okay. Well, if you go home, it's me too. And that's all we got to say. Until you got something like else to say, I'm going to get back in my bed and we're just going to go to bed or whatever. So not the greatest reaction, but totally understood. And again, I caught myself for a moment being like, oh, geez, like, come on, like a little more sympathy right off the bat. And then being like, yeah, I guess I probably maybe would have done the exact same thing or had the exact same reaction. Cause you're in this house, especially with the expedited timeline, you're literally thinking we're 1 day away from the final. Like, we're about to go do a daily challenge and then have an elimination. And then tomorrow we're going to do the final. Like, damn, it's tomorrow. Like, we're 24 hours away. Maybe they're 48 hours away if it's a 2-day time frame. But like, we're right there. Like, of course you're going to react that way. And final question on the injury is then, they're able to do, she does the daily challenge, and says, seems to be maybe in some pain, but does it. And, got to move around a lot, got to get up and down, jump up onto the rig. And she does fine, or doesn't just do fine, does great, as 4 of the 5 women do. We'll talk about that in a moment. Gets the whole thing done. And then in the elimination as well, crushes it, doesn't seem to have necessarily any problems. And, is in a, Darrell mentioned his back tightening up in the elimination. He's swinging that sledgehammer a little more. She's taking a little bit more smart approach with her busting up and just kind of sitting by her 3-inch hole in the wall and smashing stuff up at her feet and tossing it in down on her knees where she can actually maybe not ruin that lower back the way Darrell is just, begging for his lower back to stop flaring up as he swings that sledgehammer over and over. But how is it going to affect the final? We'll get ahead of ourselves here. We're going to keep talking about the rest of this episode. At the very end, we will make our predictions for the final, but it should be said, a bad back, you don't want to do anything on that, certainly. And, if we were rating things you would be a little bit more equipped to do versus not do, I'm going to guess carrying stuff while constantly running or walking is about as low on it as you want. There's rarely in a final is there anything like pure, like physical, like hitting each other, wrestling, anything like that. Great, but just the endurance alone, going uphill, I'm guessing they're going up some sort of mountain somehow, some way. I'm guessing they're going to have to jump off a couple things. I'm guessing they're going to have to carry a bunch of stuff. That's going to be really hard. So we'll see how it affects her then. But so far, so good. I mean, they've been competing well. It seems like they've done multiple dailies with this going on. And now on this one, she does really, really well in the daily and great in the elimination. So we will see. As for that daily, let's talk about that next. Daily challenge. I did not write down the name, so I do not remember what it's called, but a challenge first. They've got 3 semi-trucks, which I feel like there's got to have been 3 semi-trucks at some point before. As many times as they've used semi-trucks at this point, I was kind of blown away when TJ said a challenge first, but they know better than I for sure. Overall, I'm going to give this daily challenge a B+. The recap, what they had to do, the middle double-decker bus, they start on top. They jump down on, their each individual semis over on the side. They got to undo about 3 or 4 knots a piece to undo 4 different lock boxes, get a lock out, run to the other side of the semi, put it in a lock, come back, get the next one, do that 4 times, unlock the big one, take that key, jump up and climb up the rope to get back on top of the big double-decker, open that box. Both partners have to do it before the time limit is up and the semi-trucks, pull away from each other. And before we get to winners and losers, who does well, who doesn't, B+ overall. Strengths of this daily challenge. It is pretty neat visually. Sometimes the being on top of the truck doesn't really do anything because then the camera is static in relationship to the people and you don't actually, it's just kind of I don't know. There's not really a point of them other than, I'm sure they're a little more nervous being on a moving vehicle versus on land, but from our view, it doesn't change much. This one actually, getting to see them go back and forth from top to bottom. It was pretty neat visually. And it was a challenge that is a pure composure challenge. This is not a physical. This is not a mental. This is a composure challenge. The knots, there's a lot of them, but they seem to be very, very basic, regular style knots that if you just stay composed, you can move through quickly. The locks, yes, everything's shaking, as Nehemiah and many others point out, trying to hold a lock with one shaking hand, try to put the key in with the other shaking hand. Everything's shaking, everything's moving. It's not really working. Just composure and not freaking out that it takes you 5 seconds to do something that you think should take you half a second. And then the whole thing's composure, not freaking out about how long do I have. All of it is just stay composed, stay focused, and just move through it as quickly as you can, but not, it's composure over mental or physical. That's what we're getting at. Weaknesses kind of the challenge. Gotta say, it's a lot of production. Again, 3 semis, one of them a double-decker. A lot of production involved in essentially a challenge of who can undo 4 knots the fastest and in time, because that's kind of all it is. It's just undoing the 4 little rope knots. And so that's a whole lot of setup and work and producing to get to an end result that's ultimately just untying 4 sets of knots and putting some keys in. So, B+ overall, though. I did really enjoy it. And this is one of them that would be very, very fun and is that type of stuff that, a lot of the dailies fit into, but not all of them, certainly, where the players, say, this is why we come back over and over, even if we don't need the money, if we've won or we lost or whatever. We get to do crazy, wild shit that you would never do anywhere else. This is one of those where it's like, yeah, that seems like it would be very, very fun. Winners of this challenge, little winners, losers here. The winners, all the women, all of them, even 4 out of 5, even Jodi, who is the only one of the women not to actually finish the entire thing. It wouldn't have mattered. And her fingers were literally like bleeding afterwards. I don't know if she got the wrong set of ropes or what. But the women crush it. Even in the case of Nehemiah and Melinda, the only pair that get it done, Melinda smokes Nehemiah in finishing it. The women are way ahead of the guys in every single one of the heat. They, again, 4 out of the 5 of them get the job done and get up there and just absolutely crush it. As for losers, all the men, basically, excluding Nehemiah. Nehemiah's a winner. But the other 4 do really, really poorly. And most certainly Brad, which this will just lead us right into, we'll move on from the daily challenge and talk about just Brad and Jodi in general. Did they just not listen to the rules, like, at all? Did they just completely black out when TJ or whatever producer comes in and maybe explains the rules of the game to them or what they were going to be doing? Because the moment their heat starts, first, Jodi literally doesn't seem to know what she was about to do. It seemed like someone was like having to tell her as it happened. Like she was just on top of the thing. She jumps down and then it's like, wait, oh, what do we do? What do we do? Oh, we gotta untie these. There's knots. Like, what's going on? I don't even know. Like, was she not listening at all? And then Brad, Jodi, at least, maybe if she didn't seem like she totally knew what she was supposed to do, she starts doing it. She figures it out pretty quickly. Brad, literally immediately, it's the first box. This would make sense if it was like an editing thing. It's like, well, it's on the 3rd box and maybe he's freaking out because of the time, whatever. It's like, no, it's the moment he jumps down, he looks and he's like, wait, I have to like do something to open this box? What do you mean? I thought I was just going to grab the key and go. Like, they very clearly told you about the ropes, the knots thing, like very, very clearly. He just immediately 2-hand grabs and is like, nah, this seems like a handle. I can just rip this off. Just rips it off. And shouldn't Brad be very, very aware, or has it just been too many years? Shouldn't he be very aware to not break any rules about ripping things? If you remember back on the duel, maybe Brad has been, to his credit, sometimes detriment credit, either way you want to look at it, though, his career is filled. He's a part of a lot of big, famous, iconic challenge moments where he's good, bad, or indifferent, but involved in them. One of those, one of his earliest, was on the duel. he versus CT, the last elimination of the season to see who got to face Wes in the final. CT smokes him. They're like pushing the little, the big log where you stand on either side and try to turn it around a turnstile, and you get it all the way around, and you have to unclip a flag from the ground. CT just moves him with no problem at all. In a couple seconds flat, gets to the flag, and then famously rips the flag off. Instead of taking his time and unhooking it, he gets disqualified. He goes home. Brad goes to the final. It was a huge moment. So Brad knows about not ripping things when you're not supposed to. It's been a long time since the duel. Maybe he's forgotten, or maybe he just, I don't know, but he freaked out on top of that semi-truck, just rips him off, which, while a complete bonehead move, kind of impressive how easily he just is like, well, I could just rip him, and just rips him 1, 2, 3, 4 right in a row. Not as impressive. Even though he just straight rips all of them off pretty quickly, he doesn't actually get done with the whole thing. But wouldn't matter. They're DQ'd. And as for they, eventually they go home, which we'll talk about the arena at the end of this. But Brad and Jodi as a pair, they had the endurance, they had the strength all day long. They were number one in the class, number one in this cast for sure on the endurance front and the strength front, male and female, no doubt about it. They just literally didn't have the brains, or, as we said with this daily, the composure. Either one of them. And the composure thing was a bit of an Achilles heel for both of them back in the day when they were on the show before. Brad, definitely, this is not the first time we've seen some anger things for him. And Jodi, it's not the first time we've seen her kind of just get, she, even in the duel when she won, there, a little paranoia could set in, a little bit kind of just, apprehension or just kind of stress that she'd wear on her sleeves. And so, that lack of composure catches up with them. The inability to, say this is a brain first operation, not a strength and endurance, especially when we get to the arena here. We'll talk about that game was just as much, if not more, brains and strategy than the endurance and strength. And they definitely went with we're the strongest and the most fit here. So let's just smash. But I'm honestly kind of shocked they didn't win this season. We predicted early in the season that, if Derek could go home, Brad would slide in with Jodi as partner and they could dominate. That essentially happened up until this very episode. That Derek went home, Brad immediately is like, Jodi, we got to be partners. Anytime it's partners again, then they become full-on partners when the twist in the middle of the season, and they win a couple dailies. They're dominating. They're clearly, if they would have ran the final, unless the whole thing is just purely puzzles or something, those two are going to wipe the floor with this final. I believe that. I stand by that, but that's why you got to throw them in eliminations. They have a better chance of losing those. So good on Nehemiah and Melinda for doing that. Let's talk about each of these two individually here for a moment, since we're saying goodbye to them at the end. Jodi, definitely, I think this season earned her reputation as one of the best females to have ever played the game. She and the producers, or the show, whatever, brought up a couple different times this season, she was the first female to ever win an individual season. Her and Wes back on the duel were the first ever individual winners. That was the first individual season. She won in a pretty good cast on the female side, just an all around amazing cast all the way through show and sports side, both in consideration there. But she really proved that, a decade or whatever later it is, solidified that reputation as, she came back into the All-Star house and was kind of immediately everyone looking at her as the dominant physical threat on the female side, and lived up to that reputation for sure. So that was awesome to see, and definitely enjoyed having her back. I would love to see her back on another season or two of All-Stars. As for Brad, he's got one of the biggest, he's not necessarily one that I over the top root for, as I think I've said before on podcasts, I have a small handful of people that I will fully admit to, like, I'm completely biased. I just decided at one point I love these people, I stand these people, I'm ride or die for these people, and it's going to take a lot of shitty behavior or whatever for me to move off of that. But for the most part, there's about like 80% of the cast that I'm like, yeah, I'm like rooting for them in the sense I like them and want them to do well and good things to occur to them. There's maybe only about 10% or so that I'm like, nah, fuck these people. Like, I want them to lose. I don't want them on the show. I don't like these people I don't have no value brought to me through this show because of their appearance on it. And then another 10% that's kind of that stand category. So a big group in the middle that's just like, yeah, I like enjoy these people. And maybe that could even be split into two. But Brad's in that big chunk of like, I definitely like him. I root for him, in a vacuum. I would say I root for Brad. But he is one that has an outsized kind of piece of my heart. It's separate from like rooting for him to like win the game as like a competitor, as a challenger. As on like the personal human level, there's a bit of my heart anytime that Brad is on a season that's just like, this guy, I think he just needs a win. Like, come on, man. Like, can we get this guy a win? Like, he's capable and deserving and feels like he could need it. And I think that's because he so very much so, he wears everything on his sleeves so much and is so like, it's not even I mean, he is a very authentic person, I think, but that's not even the number one word I'm looking for here of his authenticness. He's like 100% of the time in kind of like Brad mode, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, so I guess 100% of the time, like really, really authentically him, but he clearly is like, I am a good person and it matters to me to be a good person. And he wants to wear that and wants people to know, like, I want to be a good, fair, honest, person, even in this game, and treat people right and have friendships and have meaning and everything. But he also clearly has some demons, and, which we all do. I certainly do. Almost everyone out there, I'm sure, can, in their own privacy say they've got some of their own. He wears those on his sleeves a little bit as well. Just from, when we saw he had that huge break, he came back for Vendettas and Final Reckoning, and he definitely, had kind of turned everything about his personality kind of up to 10, and there was a little bit of that anger coming through that was always there before, but then it was like, we've observed there was a personal life that happened between when we saw you for a multi-year stretch on the show, and then you came back for a couple seasons, and now we're seeing you on All Stars. And he just wears all that on his sleeves at all times. And it seems like such a great guy that can just have moments of, I'm just going to use my muscles to figure this out. And, that costs him here. But I really want him to win so bad, which makes me, I want him to come back to All Stars. I think he can win. I'm shocked again that they didn't end up winning this season. I want him to get that win. But I also will say, as much as I would love to have him come back on All Stars and get an All Stars win and just get a win and get the money and, have a real good win on, to add to his belt, I think he is my top candidate to go back to the flagship show of anyone that's been on these first two seasons of All Stars, or anyone out there really, of the older school, that was around during the first 15 to 20 seasons or so. Other than, of course, there's a few, but the others that I'd pick above him are ones that like have been on as recently or seem to still be in the ether of the flagship show. But the reason is there's a few things I would want to look for in someone like one of the OGs to go back to the flagship. There's plenty that I would love to see. Admittedly, yes, a lot more on the male side, just because I think there's a few more of them that maybe physically can stand up to it, and that I wouldn't feel that bad if Mark Long went on the flagship and they're like, hey, guess what, buddy? You get to do a hall brawl versus Nelson or Fessy or Josh or someone. Be like, okay, he signed up for it, great. But out of everyone that, I would love to see the Godfather go, but that'd be incredible. But I think Brad is the perfect candidate two specific reasons. One, it just if anyone's going to do it, if anyone's going to go, I've come back in All Stars, kind of re get the engines going here, and then I jump over to the flagship, and I haven't been there in forever. They have to be able to physically compete. That's kind of the first thing. That's the real difference between the two seasons. When it really comes down to it, is the level of physical competition is a bit different. And he certainly can still stand up to that in the flagship, no problem. Still can compete with all of them physically, it would seem. And so once that's met, the second reason, the reason I think it would just be an unbelievable to have Brad go back to the flagship house. And we saw a lot of this on Vendettas and Final Reckoning. But he is just the perfect mixture of volatile and fun as a choice for a house dad that would just be fed up with everyone else in the house and all the younger people and all the shenanigans and shit that they're pulling that, yeah, he might have been a part of, a decade ago, but he ain't having it. Like, we got a couple great moments of that on Final Reckoning and Vendettas, but I still feel like he was kind of figuring some things out in his personal life. He had the relationship with Brittany. I would just love to see him back in the flagship house, continually telling people I could see him being similar to like what Ayanna an episode ago was doing, where it's like she's just picking up after everyone and then like making people know, and they're all like, we don't give a fuck, we're on vacation. And I feel like if Brad went in the flagship house, he would be the one, like, every little altercation or argument, he'd be trying to talk him down, tell him how to be a good person, this, that, the other, but would also get super mad, and if they poked his buttons, would like pop off at him, but then also could walk into having to put the shoulder pads on at a daily challenge and wreck some people still as the older guy in the room. All of it would be great. So let's get Brad back on the flagship. That's their storyline. The final thing to touch on then is the arena. We briefly mentioned it a couple times in passing. I'm giving the game they played, which is called Smash House, a full-on A. It's a physical, mental mix, beautifully mixing the physical and the mental. I like ones that have a time limit, that we kind of have an idea of where it's at the whole time and kind of an idea of how it's going. This is definitely one, though, like I always say, it's 10 minutes. Why can't this show be 6 minutes longer? Why can't, it was 4 or 5 minutes worth of showing us them doing the elimination. I want to see a clock that says 10 minutes in the corner, and I want to watch the whole thing. Give me the all 22 film of this. Put it on MTV.com. Put it on your Instagram somewhere. I want to just watch the full 10-minute thing. It's not that long. Let me see it. And also, it seems so much fun to do this. And as we alluded to before, the brain matters way more than the muscles. We'll come back to that in a moment. The only weaknesses I would see of this challenge, the only reason it's not an A+ is eventually we are just watching the same thing over and over. So they're really relying on kind of the confessionals to carry the show here for a few minutes while we're watching them do this, and hoping and really relying on it being a tight race so that the suspense can be built and built and built. But even saying that, again, I just said I would happily watch the full 10-minute, put the clock on the corner like a true sporting event. Let me see that. So an A overall. Strategy corner. Darrell and Janelle kind of did this. I don't know if it was 100% on purpose or thought through, or if it was just on Janelle's end and Darrell didn't really know. And so it was when she could, she did, and didn't, when she couldn't, she didn't. But Monday Morning Quarterback, looking at this with hindsight, watching it be done, it seems like the obvious strategy is the first person, Brad and Darrell in this case, if they can smash the stuff small enough to fit through both of the holes so that the second person can just simply sit over against the wall where there's the second smaller hole is, and have, if Darrell smashes it up small enough to go through both, he can throw it through his hole pretty easily if they're that small and they take up, half of the size, which will get all the way across. Janelle could be sitting right there and just pick it up and dump into the box without having to do any smashing herself. I think that would ultimately be a little bit faster, and there's probably, if you take your time, again, that composure part coming back on the first cinder block or two, which, by the way, lovely living room setup. TJ, just 20 cinder blocks to hold up your couple shelves in your chair or whatever. Just lovely, lovely design work there by the interior design team at the challenge. But I also think there was a way, Brad and Darrell were just going full on, like, just smash the shit. Brad clearly really enjoyed picking up each block and smashing it against the ground, 2 hands over the head. Darrell really clearly liked using that sledgehammer. All the power to him. It did remind me a little bit, though, of when I think it was Total Madness. Yeah, Total Madness, I believe, when Tori and Jenna had an elimination where they had to smash a bunch of cinder blocks into through a grate. Like they had to stand on top of a grate and they'd smash cinder blocks, and the pieces that would fall through the grate would fall down to a wheelbarrow below that they'd go wheelbarrow over and dump in their weight bucket or whatever. And Jenna ended up beating Tori, and it was almost exclusively due. They both performed really well, but it was really due to Jenna kind of taking her time early on and figuring out, how do I smash these blocks to make the right size of what I'm doing? There's a different way to drop them on their side, the short side, the long side, on the edge, whatever. And Tori was just more going just ferocious, just smash, 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 smash until I think I'm done. And I think there was a way for Brad and Darrell here, similar to that, to, hey, what's the proper way to smash the cinder block that clearly smash very easily? Is there a way to do it where, where one smash straight down flat on the side versus on an edge versus the long side, the short side, where I kind of repeatedly end up with a lot more usable pieces in one smash versus having to pick up a couple big pieces and smash those, or a couple, a couple of them. They did it, and it was like, dude, that thing blew up on impact. You have no pieces left. It's all freaking dust everywhere. So I think the strategy definitely is take your time at the beginning, figure out what's the best way to smash these to get the optimal pieces. And then again, if those are small enough, that first person, just chuck them all the way through to the other side and make them small enough so the second person doesn't actually have to smash all that much. That's where we said from the start, it's way more brains than muscles. It's endurance for sure. You got to keep it moving 10 minutes without stopping. It's endurance, but it's not as much just, hey, who can smash this block the hardest? Yeah, Brad, you win. You absolutely win. Hey, who can swing this sledgehammer the hardest or the most accurate? Yeah, Darrell, you win. But it was way more, how do you use your strength in an efficient, smart manner? But Darrell and Janelle get the win. And they didn't dominate. All four of them dominated, honestly. I mean, it also is 10 minutes is a long time to be doing that kind of physical work, especially with how hyped up you are. And then to have something when you get to smash something and it feels really good, and then you start putting a little more into it than you even need to. You're using way more energy. You're hyped up. You're breathing heavy. 10 minutes is a long time. So hats off to all four of them. With that, I believe that's our 4 storylines here. We have double checking here. Brad, Jodi, Janelle's injury, the daily, the arena. Great. Got it all covered. A few more things of note to discuss, but we will do so via handing out our hardware. Our final, I guess not our final awards of the season. I guess there would still be a best quote and moment and an MVP of the finale episode. So our second to last award ceremony of the season. Let's move into that segment and hand out some hardware. First award, as always, the Teck Money Award for the best fit of the episode in honor of our king. Teck made this entire award basically because of his wonderful wardrobes that he was bringing into the All-Stars house. And from what we had seen from season 1 and also from just the challenge in general, we've always thought we should maybe comment on the wardrobes that can be a little bit out of control from time to time. And I'm honestly now at this point of this season thinking that, one, if Teck is on the season, maybe we shouldn't have this award, or maybe it should just be, hey, was Teck's outfit fire or not this week? And that could be its own segment because he's just going to pretty much win every time. And I'm also thinking this is much more an award that we need to maybe do on the flagship show, because thought we'd get, last week we got the 10 seconds of the 90s party. And I was like, hey, I want to see what everyone's wearing to this. What kind of random clothes did they pull out from the 90s and the early 2000s to wear to this? Come on, show it to us. So we haven't got to see as much of it as we thought on this season. And also just the flagship series is a little more is Fessy trying to pull off that Dwayne The Rock Johnson turtleneck and, look with the fanny pack and whatever is, people go all out, and there's, 36 of them to start, and they're getting dressed up for the cocktail party the first night and all that. But we still got the award for now for this season, and the Teck Money Award for the best fit of this episode. Honestly, probably should go to Teck, but we've given it to him 7 of the 8 times or something crazy like that. So The one other piece of clothing that we spotted that we were into, because again, the last few episodes have also just been a lot more like they're at the daily and then they're doing the selections and then they're at the arena and they're all re-wearing clothes we've seen by this point of the season. But if I'd seen it before, I haven't noticed, but I definitely would say the one piece of clothing I would have, bought straight off of someone in this episode is Nehemiah's short sleeve hoodie, the white with the black accents in it. Love me a short sleeve hoodie. You can say I'm a total dork for that. That's totally fine. I'm into it. And I thought he had a really, really great one. And I don't think we've seen that this season. And everyone else, Teck had a great outfit, but I believe we've seen it multiple times. A couple of the ladies had some nice dresses going on for the selections. I believe we've seen all of them before. I think I glanced MJ rocking the classic MTV logo T-shirt yet again. We've seen multiple times over. So we're going to give it to Nehemiah, but probably should be to Teck anyways. But they're both kings. They could share it. They can put it up on the mantle in the king's palace, and they can look at them and be like, hey, we won all of those. And Teck can be like, well, I won most of them. But yeah, we both won them. Anyways, on to the best moment of the episode. 3 nominees for the best moment. First one is the song and dance in the entire interaction before the daily challenge between Teck and Ayanna, which we will talk about specific words from it here in a moment for best quote. But, they go back and forth. There's mention of babies. Then there's a song sang about the baby. And I'm really impressed by Teck. I don't know if this was just totally off the cuff or if this has come up before. It seems like maybe Ayanna's mentioned wanting to have babies with Teck a time or two before to his face. Who knows? But the little dance, the baby in the stomach, now you push it down. I mean, it's like an actual legit dance. I was like, hey, you guys look good. But that whole interaction was hilarious and great. Second moment, Darrell reading the notes from his family. Real vet move by Darrell. First off, vet move by Darrell and his family. Just absolute flex of a move by his family to be like, hey, we're going to write you these letters. Do not open them until the morning of the final. What a flex to be like, hey, dude, we know who you are. We know who you are. You're going to be in that final. So you wait till the morning of the final, and then you read these for motivation. Not a day sooner, but then also the vet move by Darrell to be like, hey, the final probably is tomorrow anyways, so I'm pretty much weighted to the time, but I'm going into elimination. I want to have the moment of reading these here while they're going to mean a lot to me. They're going to mean a lot if I read them on the bus ride when my ass is getting sent back home, but they're going to mean a lot more right now. So he gets them out. He reads them. He finds out his grandmother is passed, gets the picture of her, has the notes from, it looked like he had multiple of them, so I think his wife, multiple kids. Really, really heartwarming, touching stuff. And really, really cool to have that with Darrell, too. I feel like he's one over the years that, he's just always been this incredibly cool character, this really cool guy. Everyone looks up to him. And, early days on the show, he was a little bit more of a goofball, a little bit more in the kind of party scene, in the kind of, in the interactions of the house. He obviously has the big, famous punching Brad out on the ruins. But we've always known he's been on the main season, the flagship seasons, with knowing like he's got a full-on family back at home with like kids that are, multiple years old, that are like actively growing up and whatever. And I feel like we've never got tons of, he keeps it close to the vest. He doesn't let a lot through, only the minimal he needs to, and otherwise just rides and like, I was the first ever GOAT, 4-time champ, coolest guy in the room. That's it. You can know I'm a boxer and that's it. And so it was really nice to have that moment with him. Prayers to him and his family for, losing a loved one. But it was a very touching thing, and it was nice to have a moment like that with Darrell, a very real moment, and learn a little bit more about him and go behind the scenes, even if it comes at the coming at the expense of personal tragedy. Our heart goes out to the family for that. Third and final moment, that's the nominee for moment of the week, TJ's twist at the end. We will talk about it here when we do our predictions for next week's episode. But second time, gotta say, all those people that out there talking about All-Stars versus the flagship and what to do and what not to do, and TJ's dropping a lot of twists this season and comes with yet another one. So they're headed straight to the final, and that I was shocked. Honestly, I was zero expectation of that. I feel like usually TJ's twists, if you might not always know the moment they're coming, but you're kind of aware one's coming. I didn't think anything other than like get some sleep. Like this final is going to be brutal. I thought it was just going to be the regular that speech. Instead, it was get some sleep. Final is going to be brutal, but also don't get some sleep because the final starts right now. So that was an incredible moment. Of those three, I've got to give the award, best moment of the episode, to Darrell reading the notes from his family again. Just really heartwarming stuff and peeling some layers back from the OG GOAT, Darrell. Best quote, 4 nominees. First one, MJ, who thankfully takes the words right out of, I'm going to assume, most viewers' mouth, certainly this viewer, and I say this out of love the King's Palace, love the song. The song's stuck in my fucking head for like weeks on end now, even more than, the poor people in the house that we have this opening montage of all of them, singing it. Jonna's cooking. It's like, God damn it, I'm singing the song again. Someone's brushing their teeth. God damn it, I'm singing the song again. They're all singing it. MJ is the only one who's like, you know what? Fuck this song. And that really hit home for me because we're on like episode 5 or 4 or 5, or we're on episode like 6 or 7 of The King's Palace, which is fantastic. We're on at least episode 4 straight up of like the song being very, very prevalent. And we're on like week 4 of me having the song, the words, save the palace in my head. So let's hear MJ and his reaction to that being stuck in his and everyone else's head.
I'm used to that shit now, but that song just sounded terrible.
It's catchy.
Oh my God. Like, I'm taking a shower, brushing my teeth, I'm humming it. Save the palace, save the palace. Shut the fuck up. I guess it does have you singing it.
Then, second nominee, we've got Darrell commenting on Brad's strategy of just ripping the boxes off instead of undoing the nuts. Let's hear that from Darrell.
Come on, what the fuck?
Rip that shit off.
I guess Brad didn't listen to the rules. You have to untie the knots, okay? You can't just rip the box off like you the goddamn Hulk. Calm down, brother.
Someone had to make the Hulk reference there. It had to happen. And then he does get to smash stuff later. It feels like Brad's kind of in on the whole Hulk thing with him. Third nominee is the one we referenced before during Best Moment. That is Ayanna to Teck. Teck, says we're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to make this. We're going to make that. And then Ayanna, maybe it's the first time she's letting these feelings be known, but to Teck directly, she's let it be made known through her confessionals to us, the fan. But she lets Teck know that there's something she would like to make with him. Let's hear that exchange from her and them.
Ayanna, you ready?
Yeah, we've been fighting like a married couple, but we're gonna make up and make it right today.
Maybe make a baby.
Do the baby, do the baby, do the baby, do the baby. Now push it out. Now push it out. Now push it out.
You ready?
Again, Teck coming up with a dance right on the spot like that. Just fantastic stuff all around from both of those two who have been pure joys all season long. And then fourth and final nominee is Teck himself, who stands up for all of us dumb Americans out there, us dummies using, I'm such an extreme dummy that I almost just messed up the different measurement systems, and TJ, just to mess with everyone, comes out and says this, they were only this many kilos different. And all of us are like, wait, does a kilo weigh more or less than a pound, TJ? Because I don't know if that's close, if you're trying to make this sound closer or further apart. And Teck stands in and lets be known he don't know what a kilo is either, and that's just fine. So Teck, let's hear that from him.
Wow. 1 kilo. Wow. I don't know how much a kilo is, but it doesn't sound like a lot.
2 pounds separated you.
And with that, the quote of the week, it's going to go to Ayanna. Maybe make a baby. But I just have to real quick, I just remembered listening to Teck ask what the kilo was. The final count on the arena game was 357 pounds to 355 pounds, and I've got some questions. Let's just leave it at that. 10 minutes through a 3 by 3 inch hole, 350 pounds of cinder block. I mean, I don't know. But maybe I wrote down the numbers wrong. Maybe there was kilos, and kilos are not anywhere near. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I question the numbers a little bit. I would have loved the scale was sitting right there in front of TJ. I'm guessing potentially did all of the challengers have to like watch him weigh it and see the results and then have to be like act surprised when he says it? Who knows? But best quote, Ayanna. And then the episode MVP. This one was actually a unanimous one. A surprise unanimous. You'd think there's a good amount of people who could win some votes here, but no, you're wrong. Unanimous episode MVP, Darrell. He's got good quotes and confessionals throughout. He's a part of all of the storylines of the episode, essentially. He has, the best moment that we talked about, reading the letters. He gets the elimination win. And, he handles... I love how he handled the selection process and his little monologue there and how he just he plays the game the way he plays the game, true to himself all the way through. He's the episode MVP. So those are your awards. Nehemiah, the best fit. Darrell, the best moment. Ayanna, the best quote. And Darrell, the episode MVP. With that, let's move into our final segment. That is our predictions. We're not even going to do the power rankings because they are just basically the predictions for who will win the final. So let's close it out with that. On the prediction front, we can finally update and finish out the preseason and the midseason predictions. We did horrible, folks. We did absolutely goddamn awful. How we started really strong. Things were looking great. Initially, first couple episodes, we're like, damn, I got to go 10 for 10, naming all the finalists and the winners. My first 2 season-long predictions from episode 1 and 2, nailed them. Couldn't have got them more right. And then things just went off a cliff. By the end of the season now, we officially, only 8 people made the final, not 10. I only got 3 of them right, Darrell, Janelle, and Melinda. I got Brad, Tyler, Kahutta, Ryan, Jodi, Kendall, Jasmine, all wrong. And, of course, Brad and Jodi, who I said would win, and I felt fantastic about right up until the moment where they lost this episode, and they're gone. So got that one wrong. As for the mid-season predictions that we were making 1 episode at a time, we got 3 right, 4 wrong, including 2 that were knocked out this week with Darrell not seeing an elimination. That happened. And MJ and Jonna flipping. That never happened. So 3 for 4 on those. 3 for 7. Oh, plus I got first to go home wrong. 3 and 11 on preseason predictions. 3 and 4 midseason predictions. But that won't stop us from predicting what will happen next week in the finals. Of course it won't. In lieu of a power rankings, because at this point, one episode left, the final to be run, a power ranking is essentially a prediction of who I think will win and in what order. Couple questions going in to this. I just have no idea how much running will be involved, and assuming that a lot of it will be, I have no idea how any of these people are going to do with the running. We had the 2 episodes ago, run the mile loop, but they also... Well, there's a lot of endurance in that, obviously. They were all moving at a very moderate jog. No shame in that. But then they were also taking a long breaks every half mile, looking at the puzzle, putting the puzzle together. And so it was a decent gauge. It was at least a decent gauge like, hey, they're all capable. I think everyone's going to finish this final. But I have no idea how much running will be involved and how many of these people, how they will do with it. Will Janelle's back ruin her and Darrell's chances? I guess it should be said, are they going to actually run it 100% as pairs? Are they going to switch it up? Is it going to be individual? What's going to go down? I have said all season long, I thought they were going to have 2 winners. So it seemed like they would just keep these 4 pairs, but maybe they switch it up. Maybe they do like they did last season. And, at each station you have to be with a different person, and it's a point system, and they still would have maybe 2 winners. I don't know, but is Janelle's back going to ruin her chances? Can Nehemiah and Melinda run? It seems like the answer is yes, but do we actually know that for sure? Can MJ and Jonna? It seems like the answer is yes. Do we actually 100% know that? Jonna, at least we know she got second last season, and so she just did an All-Stars final. She's the only one in this group. No, her and Darrell. Her and Darrell. So big advantage, Jonna and Darrell, potentially of we just did one of these, pretty recently, and that's a good thing for them, just the confidence to know, whatever it is, we just did it, we finished it, we did well, we can finish well. And correction there, Darrell got second, Jonna got third. Right? Yeah, yes, Darrell, Jonna and Kellyanne, I think, like tied for third in points or whatever, but Jonna finished, whatever. They both did great. My pick, though, to win, in order, I think, last to first. I think Teck and Ayanna are going to get last, but I do think they are going to finish. Mostly, I see them having the most trouble when it comes to the amount of puzzles that might be involved or just the working together. They are the epitome of before and after the actual challenges. They have the best team chemistry in the world. They work so well together, as advertised by the moment and quote that we just recently talked about of them with the dance, the baby comment, all that, the dances before, the afterwards, the celebration, all that. But when it's actually happening, they don't 100% work fantastically together, or just when they get flustered, their flustered modes don't mix together very well. I think they're going to come in fourth. I think Darrell and Janelle are going to come in third, mostly because I think Janelle's back. Like, I don't think it would be such a storyline this episode if it doesn't hold her up in some way. And even if we don't fully know about it, if your back's hurting again, these finals, they already suck so bad. Your back's already going to hurt after this final one way or the other, and going into it with an actual hurt back. I mean, yeah, I don't see how if they were fully healthy, I feel like I might have them in first, but I think they're going to get third. I think Nehemiah and Melinda are going to come in second. The Austin crew is going to come up just short. And I think MJ and Jonna are going to win. I think Jonna is going to go from third to first, be crowned like the full-on queen, ruler of all stars for the time being, with a third place finish and then a first place finish. I think MJ might quietly, there's a couple moments the last few episodes where, not to be a weirdo about it, but he had his shirt off and I was like, dude's got a lot of muscle still going on there. Like, he's just a big dude. He's got, but he seemed to run really decently well. They both worked so well together on that mini final. They have the opposite of that. Teck, Ayanna, we said their flustereds kind of work well together, if that flustereds is a word, which it's not, but I'm just going to make it one. If the chips are down or if something's confusing or whatever, and they're both kind of getting a little agitated or whatever, they kind of actually mesh well in those moments that we've seen. So I think MJ and Jonna are going to win. I think Nehemiah and Melinda are going to come in second. I think it'll be a very tight race. If, on the off chance there's a twist and they flip it on up and somehow it's just a male winner and a female winner and they have to rotate teams or whatever, if that happens, I still think Jonna wins. But I think Darrell wins on the male side. So just that little caveat. But with that, that's our predictions. We got one episode left. The final All-Stars 2, a champion or champions will be crowned. We will be back next week to talk about it all. That is all for this episode. As always, please, please, please hit that subscribe, follow button, and of course, hit that 5-star rating and review if you don't mind. Both on Apple Podcasts, where it's been forever, but now on Spotify as well. Follow us on Instagram at Challenge Historian, on YouTube at Challenge Historian, anywhere at Challenge Historian. If we're there, you will find us very easily. Thank you so much for being here. I look forward to speaking to you again next week to talk about that final, TJ's final, of course. Have a great weekend. Until we talk again, peace.